I don't want to set up for a child the math equation that doesn't really math, of like, she loved me, so she chose someone else to take care of me. That doesn't make sense to them. That doesn't make sense. And especially when I'm then saying to my child, I love you. That can be very confusing to make sense of what that means.
AFTHtv is where the many voices of adoption come together to educate, support, and inspire.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adoptions from the Heart TV. I'm your host, Amanda Aliberti. I am excited to welcome Kelly Rodenbush, who is the Executive Director at the Sparrow Fund. Welcome, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. It's fun to talk about adoption with someone who cares about it as much as I do.
Do you first want to share with folks who maybe are unaware of the Sparrow Fund and a little bit about your journey starting this organization?
Yeah, sure. We've been around for about 15 years. My husband and I founded it together following our own adoption experience. We had lots of help in our adoption process. And then when we came home with our daughter, who was adopted internationally as a toddler, we found ourselves not really sure what we were doing and experiencing a real gap in care. So we started the Sparrow Fund to serve families like our own and try to close that gap in care.
And in terms of service area and folks that you work with, age range of children, can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. We have 3 hallmark programs. One is our family care program, and through that we provide individualized support to families who are growing through adoption until they're home for a full year. So we have families who've been in the program for 5 years, if it just takes that long for them to finalize their adoption and be home for a full year. And we provide all sorts of resources, marriage support and attachment coaching and sibling help as they kind of find their new normal as an adoptive family. And then we have a clinical arm of what we do. And through that, we help families who have grown through adoption in any season who might just need a little bit of extra help facing some challenges. And then every year we run a marriage retreat and typically have families who come from 15 or so different states for that. It's held right here in the Philadelphia area every spring. And yeah, we serve families from all over the country through that program as well.
Yeah, one of the things that intrigued me about your organization is that you really focus on post-placement work. I know you service families pre, during, and after, but a lot of what you see in adoption focuses on the time of placement, but a lot of families don't think about long-term, what type of care they're going to need that really does specialize with the different layers of adoption. So there really aren't many organizations like this. So Sparrow Fund is definitely unique, and I'm excited that we can offer this as a resource for families. One of the things you spoke about was sibling connection. Yeah. So what would be your advice in preparing families to have conversations with kids about birth siblings? Maybe birth parent is parenting other kids, and how to talk to children, adoptees, about, some of those tougher layers.
So what you're asking is, like, when we have an adopted child, as parents, we have an adopted child who has siblings through their biological family who they may or may not have a relationship with. Is that what you're speaking of? Yeah. Correct. So the way I frame this is I like to frame this like layers of an onion, that we want to make sure that our children, as best we can, don't have surprises. So when they're very young or new to our family, whether that's young or not as young, we want to share the outer layer of an onion and just kind of frame their story. So if we're talking about maybe they're toddlers, and we may start with, you grew in another mommy's belly. And we're just starting with that. If they come to us older, they may have an experience of their biological family and they know that already. That feels a little different. We're not going to start there if they come into our family as older kids. But we work our way in. And somewhere in those layers, we need to introduce the fact that their biological parents may have other family members, which means that they may have other children. Sometimes we know that information, like they had other children before our child. A lot of times we don't know that information because it might be after the child came into our placement and we don't know. But we want to introduce the fact that that's a possibility. So we could just say things like, as we're working our way in to tell them all the details of their story, we might say something like, you grew in your mommy's belly, your birth mommy's belly, and she could make a baby, but she couldn't take care of a baby. But at some point, she may make a baby, and she feels like she can take care of that baby. We're just introducing the idea. It doesn't mean that she could never take care of a baby, but it meant in that moment in time when she was pregnant with the child we're now caring for, she couldn't take care of one. Now, obviously, this is different in different situations. If we are parenting a child who came to us through foster care and it was an involuntary relinquishment, we have other details here to talk about. So, like, for those listeners or viewers who are saying, well, I can't really say that, that doesn't apply to me. I know, because every situation is very unique. But there are some things that we can hold as kind of essentials. And that is, we don't want our child to be surprised. So you might even want to sketch out on a piece of paper, what are the layers of the onion? What are the language? How do we get there? You might have the center and the very outer layer. And we have to tease out, how do we get to the center? By sharing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, so that by the time you get to the center, the child's not like, what do you mean? Why didn't you tell me that? By the time you get to the center and say, oh yeah, you have 2 half-brothers that I think might be about 10 years older than you. They're like, oh, that's what you meant when you said she couldn't take care of a baby now, but she might take care of other babies. That's what you meant.
And when the response from the child is, well, why didn't she want me? What is your suggestion?
It's different. There's no manual for this. There's no best practice for how to say this, because we all have different information about our child's history, and we may have no information. So you share what you know. You share what you know. And when you don't know, you make your best guess. And you let your child know you're making a best guess. You don't make a guess and pose it as truth. Mm-hmm. But you might say something like, well, I imagine that life was really hard for her. And she knew how much care a baby needed. We're reframing it a little bit. So it's not like, why didn't she want me? We're making this more about her than about the child per se, because the reality is, if a birth mom chooses to place a child for adoption while she's pregnant, let's say, she doesn't even really know that child yet. So this isn't like she didn't like the child. This isn't like a personal thing, like they're not good enough, or I don't like the way they look. I don't like something about them. It's not personal against the child. I get that the child may think that though. I get that entirely. So we just have to help the child frame the context. But that looks different in every situation.
Sure. But what I'm hearing from you, Kelly, is you're normalizing it. You're being honest. You're creating a space of trust for a child to be able to ask questions, and you being honest as the parent of what you do and don't know, and kind of being in it with them.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, another thing I'd add to that is wanting to be very careful that we don't make promises that we aren't sure of. I typically would not recommend, unless a parent really knows this and has this information, I would not recommend telling a child that their birth mother loved them so much, or birth father. I'm talking a lot about birth mothers here, but that's because birth mothers feel much more tangible to children than birth fathers. Introducing birth fathers is a whole conversation in and of itself, because young children get that ladies' bellies grow with babies. They do not typically understand how a dad or man even fits into that equation. So that's a whole nother conversation that could be a whole episode in and of itself. right? So even though I'm focusing primarily on birth mothers here, that's because I'm aware that children's development understands birth mothers before they typically understand birth fathers. And we also often have less information about birth fathers than we do birth mothers. So I just want to clarify that. What I was going to say is I'm very careful to not make promises about a birth mother like she loved you so much that she did X, Y, or Z. Unless I absolutely know that, like I met the birth mother and she expressed something to me, in which case I can give the child those words as closely as possible. I don't want to set up for a child the math equation that doesn't really math, of like, she loved me, so she chose someone else to take care of me. That doesn't make sense to them. That doesn't make sense. And especially when I'm then saying to my child, I love you. That can be very confusing to make sense of what that means. So I give my child what I have. I make guesses for things I don't. I wonder with my child to say, wouldn't that be wonderful to know? What would you like to know? Let's think about it together. Let's talk about what we wish we knew. And I don't make promises about birth families that I don't know for sure are true. Let me put it this way. If we are afraid to be honest and real about some of the messy details, if we don't share the messy details and only share the prettier type parts of the story, it's really hard to give permission for a child to be mad or sad about it. If we build the birth family up as heroic, then when they feel big feelings about being mad about that their first mom made a decision she made, it can feel very scary for them to share that if we have always portrayed her as a real hero.
Sure. That makes sense. You kind of have to find the balance in all of that to allow for them to have those big feelings.
It is very much like when I'm working with children and families, I even put my hands up like this, like a scale, to literally physically kind of say, there's part of me that feels mad about this part. How about you? But there's part of me that still feels like really glad about this, and I miss her and have a place in my heart for her. But then I feel a little bit mad. And some days the mad feels a little bigger, and some days the glad is a little bit bigger. And we just kind of co-hold all of it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense.
If you've enjoyed our content on AFTHtv, I wanted to ask a quick favor. It will only take you a second to do. One of the simplest ways you can support us is by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Just click the subscribe button below this video. It will help make sure you never miss a new episode, and it helps more people discover AFTHtv. Thank you for being a part of our community. We look forward to bringing you lots of new content.
Blended families, where we have biological children and adopted children. Do you see any common patterns of things that happen in family, and what advice you have for folks that are parenting children in blended families?
I'm sure there is research done by people much smarter than me that know real data on what the patterns are. So I can only speak to my experience. I don't know what I'm sure that exists somewhere. But in my experience, I'm like, I don't know if I see a pattern. I think every family is so unique that sometimes bio kids really struggle, not so much because they have a sibling who was adopted. Sometimes it's more like my sibling, adopted or not, requires more attention from mom and dad. So really it's not so much about the adoption. It could be more that one of the children in the home demands more attention and resources. And that could be bio or adopted. It's really not as much about adoption as maybe their needs. I see that a good bit. I do sometimes see adopted children who feel jealous that people may look at family pictures and say, oh, your daughter looks just like you, about biological kids. Or maybe they're jealous of birthday celebrations when we can say, oh my gosh, I remember when I went into labor with you. Or jealous when they look at photos and there's a baby shower or there's newborn pictures, and just artifacts that are part of the family kind of culture that they don't have. So it's so different in every family. Every story is unique. We try to put adoptive families under like the same like umbrella, you know, like, and in a way we enjoy that as adoptive families, right? The adoption community is like very supportive of each other, and that's a beautiful thing. That was like a blessing of adoption I wasn't really anticipating as an adoptive parent. I love the adoption community. But at the same time, there is no two stories that are exactly the same. So I don't know if there's a pattern so much. I think it requires us as the grown-ups to pay attention, to study our children, to be looking for their challenges, not to be obsessively looking, but just like paying attention and present. And parenting is the hardest job in the world. That's hard to do.
I think, going to your point, families that are in process with us want to have the answers ready, because I think it's almost like you want to be as prepared as possible.
Oh, yes.
The right way. You know, you want it to be a simple equation of tell me what to say. But to your point, there's so much uniqueness to all of this that it's very hard to tell you exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it. It matters, you know, the child, their personality, the layers of their history, what's going on in you know, their lives and whatnot. So it's hard to give that answer, and they so badly want us as adoption professionals to hand it off, but you just can't, right?
Yeah, but I feel like that's something we say on repeat to families all the time who come saying, what do I do? Tell me what to do. Give me the manual. I'm anxious. I want to do right by my kids. And I'll say, okay, well, there's no one right way to do this. So we could try this, see how that goes. We could try this. What do you feel like works best for you? Because you set the tone and they're going to follow your lead. So if you're anxious, they're going to be anxious. So if parents need the script ahead of time, like you're describing, because they're just anxious, I'll give them a script. Like, we can do that. We can work through a script. You might have to change it when you get going. But if it makes you feel more confident and comfortable as a parent and less anxious, then let's do that.
Thank you, Callie. I think, you know, you're providing really great support for families. And I think it's good for people to know that you don't just have to turn to organizations like yours when you're in struggle or in need, but trying to be proactive ahead of time. So I guess my final question or thought from you is, what can families do to prepare? Because a lot of folks who view, you know, this interview are probably in the pre-stages of placement, and maybe are trying to be as proactive as they can to prepare for some of this. Any advice you have for prospective adoptive parents?
We have so many more resources now than families did even 10 years ago. Yeah. Things like this, like show that you have, this channel that you have, like these things didn't exist, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. We were just reading like one book. We'd like get the Connected Child, Karen Purvis's Connected Child book, and that's like what everyone read. And people still read, and I strongly recommend people do. But there's so much more access now to resources to help us tease out what does like the material, the content from books like The Connected Child and Dan Siegel's books, you know, that are just like so good to help us understand children's brains and how they need relationship. There's so many more resources now to help us engage with that content, with podcasts and mailing lists and Substack and even like TikTok accounts now that help us figure that out. That I'm like, I don't even know how to use TikTok, but like I know that these things exist and there's so much more access. So I would say find some of those things. Find like whatever type of person you are. If you're a reader, then read. If you commute to work, listen to things on audiobook. If you're a podcast person, find the podcast. There's so many. And talk to other parents. Connect with the community. Adoptive parents want to help other adoptive parents. So ask people like, what did you learn in the first year? And what were the most helpful resources for you? And how did you figure out how to do TBRI, trust-based relational intervention? Do you do that with your kids? What does it look like? What does it look like when your kids are teenagers? What does it look like when you have a kid who has a disability? And these are the questions that parents are like, I know the content, but I don't really know how to apply the content. These are all things that, like, the best resources they have is just like other people. Just talk to people. Don't do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you, Kelly, very much. You know, Adoptions from the Heart is always looking to evolve and grow, and just hearing you share about, you know, your experience working with families, it reminds me the importance of support and community. You know, as a placing agency, it can be really hard because a lot of what we do does focus on placement and trying to secure placement, right? But these conversations are so valuable, and we really encourage families to remember that this is an ongoing learning process. Access as many resources as you can. You know, go to organizations like the Sparrow Fund for extra support, and constantly be learning and evolving and growing as a parent, because I don't think anyone has the right way of doing it. You kind of have to lean on each other for support as you're moving forward. Well, thank you for your time. For folks who are interested in learning more about Kelly and her team, check out the Sparrow Fund. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you at future episodes here at Adoptions from the Heart TV.
AFTHtv is where the many voices of adoption come together to educate, support, and inspire.